Y ahora tiene la palabra Vincent Kemme, es biólogo, también antropólogo. Yo siempre digo que es de Holanda, pero él me corrige y me dice que es de los Países Bajos. De manera que es de los Países Bajos, comunica muy bien, va a hablar en inglés, también es cultura oír conferencias en otras lenguas. Tienes la palabra, Vincent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simon Castelfi, for correcting yourself on the nature of my country, Holland being just one of the Low Countries in our region. Thank you for inviting me, Monsignor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I was asked here to give a short contribution to your beautiful conference, and I will, as a biologist with a background in higher secondary education, so working with teenagers, would focus on the aspects of the sexuality and pornography, if you allow me, because this is one of the major concerns. I'll just so you see that I created an association 10 years ago where I reflect on the relationship between biology and faith, and sexuality is one of these so important topics, also considering our youth and their future. Work together with Dr. Ars in the Catholic Medical Association and is as an assistant in the FIANC, so the World Federation of Catholic Medical Associations. So as a biologist, higher education, higher secondary education is the place, and also the lower, even primary education already, is a place where young people are formed in how to live as a boy or a girl, a man or a woman. And so this is on our program, and even in Catholic schools, at least in the Low Countries, but I think all over Europe, there is a huge crisis in education on how to deal with this subject. And as we have described already, the culture where we live in, pornography, and not only masturbation, which is almost always linked to it, is become a very broad lived practice for young people, because they just have not the proper education that they should have, at least in my view. I would put the topic of pornography against the background of two revolutions that we have lived in the last decades that are all too well known to you, and other speakers will also already referred to that and all are going to speak about it: the sexual revolution and the digital revolution. So the sexual revolution, some say that it has already started in 1930, when the Anglican community allowed hormonal contraception in the Anglican Church within a couple, but still there was this development that was also hoped for by many in the Second Vatican Council, and when Pope Paul VI was about to write his encyclical Humanae Vitae in 1968, his encyclical, who prohibited contraception, and was largely in the Western world rejected by so many, even Catholic people. In one line, if I'm not a theologian, that I would resume this what happened in the Western society is the separation of the unitive and procreative nature of sexual intercourse, or any sexual behavior, I would say. So the separation of the unitive and procreative nature or goal of the sexual act. And that is where, so according to many, the crisis of the sexual revolution started. What does this mean? This means that sex can become a goal in itself. The body becomes an object. In marriage, this can lead to big problems, even to divorce. But in later times, we have also seen, immediately after the sexual revolution, much confusion about the sexual orientation. So what is my sexual identity? Young people ask themselves, which can lead to homosexual practices, and even, even somewhat later, gender confusion, not even being sure about your male or female nature. Sex has become, by the sexual revolution, just for instant pleasure. Pornography is a result of that. I'm not saying that pornography has all just come about due to the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution has contributed a lot to the practice of pornography and masturbation amongst young people, and not even only young people. And as Dr. Ars already explained, I'm not going to do the biology of addiction here, but there is, of course, dopamine and processes in our brain, in the brains of young people and all people who are addicted to something that lead to addiction. The second revolution I was promised you to talk about very shortly is the digital revolution. We just summarized it in some years that here the personal computer came up, the World Wide Web in the 80s, the laptop computer, the smartphone, and somewhat later the tablet. That's all I'm going to say about the digital revolution, because where does this lead to? Both the sexual and this digital revolution can lead to the following, which an American apologist calls the 3 A's. In English, pornography has become affordable, it has become anonymous, and it has become accessible. Affordable because in older days people had to go to a shop and buy something. Anonymous because you had to make yourself known as a client in the shop. And accessible, you had to go somewhere. But today, it is on your laptop, on your smartphone, it is free most of the time. It is anonymous, nobody knows normally where you're looking at. And it is extremely accessible because it's just potentially here. Oh, sorry. So we all must be very realistic about reality. Thank you very much. So we live a time of extreme uncertainty about human sexual reproduction. I call it human sexual reproduction because sexuality is, by nature, has the end of reproduction and not just as sex as an end in itself. As being said, the human person becomes, even like in marriages, an object. Problems with divorce, even young people that don't even marry anymore because they don't believe in a steady relationship in a marriage. So they cohabitate, and the percentages of divorce after cohabitation are far bigger than after marriage. Uncertainty about sexual orientation, uncertainty about gender, child abuse, we have heard too much about that even within the church, and my theme today, porn addiction. But there is good news. Someone in a car told us yesterday that we should have somewhat more good news. Am I correct? Yeah, he's looking at me. So I think that we can speak of a second sexual revolution that is secretly coming towards us. And I have some examples about it. What's happening, I think there is a younger generation, like women, for instance, who don't take it for obvious to take hormonal contraception because of health reasons. There is also a rediscovering of the meaning of human sexuality. I don't know the situation in Spain or in Catalonia or in the south of Europe. I'm more from the north, but I see tendencies amongst young people to rediscover what the real meaning is of human sexuality. As John Paul II called it in his Theology of the Body, the spousal meaning of the body. So our body is important, is a gift, but it has a meaning which is orientated towards a stable relationship of love that is life-giving, which is the definition of a spousal relationship. We are rediscovering even God's plan on the condition that we rediscover God in our existence. And of course this has to be linked to a responsible use of the internet. But basically, if we are rediscovering the real nature of sexuality, then we will be far more able also to make use of the internet and these means in a responsible way. So rediscovering God's plan with men and women, developing an adequate anthropology, as John Paul II calls it. Dr. Paises has already referred to the crisis in anthropology. Recognizing, which I find a beautiful term out of the Theology of the Body, the language of the body. Let's be realistic and look in the mirror, and we know where our bodies are made for in many aspects, but also in the delicate field of human sexuality. So there is another thing that I should have mentioned here, and that is the logic of the gift. So not the logic of the taking, the ego that is on the front, but the language, the logic of giving yourself to the other person. Tendencies that are coming to be more known and rediscovered by a younger generation. So therefore I put a lot of emphasis in the studying of the theology of the body. That has also been cited by Pope Francis in Amoris Laetitia, where he focused so much on the preparation of young people for living out sexuality and in love. And for many people, and I'm one of them, this means the necessity of rediscovering God himself, his existence, so his proximity in our lives. For so many people, God is a faraway instance, a concept, a theory, or even they don't believe even not in that. So there is a real need for the rediscovery of God's existence to be able to rediscover God's plan for the human body, and male or female. 5 ways conversion to go this road of this rediscovery, this second sexual revolutions. Conversion. Not only for young people who are addicted to porn, but even for us. How do we talk about sexuality? How do we talk? Do we address young people about this delicate topic? Are we able to speak the language that is necessary for them to understand what the meaning is of their body? Devotion, in the sense that our own lives have to be grounded in a personal relationship with God, by the prayer, sacraments, by community, living in Christian community, by being filled with God's Spirit, which is an aspect that is oftentimes forgotten of our Catholic life, and being really able, therefore, to be an instrument to communicate God's love to other people, to young people. This must result in education in families, parishes. I have underlined schools. When am I going to see that Catholic schools dare to give a good and solid teaching to young people on sexuality and also on pornography? Preparation programs, I'll give you some examples in a minute, to become free of addictive behavior, because we can analyze, we can see the problems, but now we have to find solutions in concrete manners to be able to help young people and to evangelize. That means that there has to be a good message, good news spread about human sexuality, about the possibility to be freed of addictions like pornography. And this is possible. And that is what the Pope, of course, asks us to do in spreading the joy of love. God's plan with human love. The joy of love. Some battlefields very quickly: marriage preparation, family life, education for children, primary, secondary, higher education, science and medicine, with all the new media, all manners, strategies, battlefields, so to say, where this gospel of this new second sexual revolution that is already taking place can be practiced. And even in the church we need to be very active in proactive, I would say, in learning how, in the formations of priests, in catechists and pastoral assistants, and to be clear on what we mean by the meaning of our bodies and the way we can help young people to get free from addictions. There's so much interesting material, but is it widespread, known within the church? I have my doubts, at least where I live. This is an example of an American. I was asked to speak in English, so I'll give some examples of good programs that help young people to get free of addiction of pornography. My Fred was for a long time in his life himself addicted and got free, and has developed a whole apostolate in the United States, where he wrote books, and he has a whole program, Strive, for what he calls a 21 porn detox program that is can be found. The text, I've sent my text to the organization, at least a text that I more or less pronounced here now, where you can find this internet site.
You have a problem with porn, or have you become sexually out of control? This behavior can ruin your job, your family, your marriage, your life. When you can exit the elevator now, why wait until it hits bottom? If you want a way out of this addiction, contact us. We're Sexaholics Anonymous, and we have a solution that works.
Another example of such an apostolate that is worldwide spread. It's not only in the American world, it's like in the country where I live, in Belgium, you can also find this organization that gives concrete and good help to young people to get free from porn addiction. And another one is Chastity Project in California, United States, where a young man speaks to large audiences with his wife, oftentimes. Imagine, I don't know whether this happens in Spain, but I'm dreaming of one day being on such a platform, and not for an even bigger crowd than your respectfully, your crowd, and especially young people that would be, and that are very open. And so this is a visible sign of what I would call the second sexual revolution in the good direction that is taking place. This is a book that is very interesting, also written. It is written by a Canadian who was working in apologetics, and he fell in love with humana vitae, as he said, Dr. Coffin. And it is a very interesting booklet that explains the separation of the unitive and the procreative end of the human sexuality. And last but not least, John Paul II, Theology of the Body. That's tough material, not for just a weekend. Explained, translated in English, speaking well by Michael Wallstein, and popularized or popularized in a very good way by Christopher West. These conferences go throughout all over the world, conferences on theology of the body. I could not recommend these enough to you to get formed yourself, to be able to communicate around you, in your families, in your work, in your church, in your associations. There's good news about the body, so there is hope for young people and less young people who are addicted to pornography. There is a way out. There's a way of living sexuality in a way that is integrated into the whole human person, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church says it. Thank you very much.